College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed at your Amherst kitchen table. But before we get to the stars in the sky and the shooting stars, let's talk about the stars of the Super Bowl. You watched the Super Bowl last night. What'd you think?
I thought the game was great. And I know we are in New England, so we are not supposed to talk about any other dynasty than the Patriots.
Yeah.
And we are not supposed to talk about any other quarterback than Tom Brady. But no, I thought the game was great. And whatever the Black Ops and the Pentagon and CIA have done, I think they engineered the game perfectly.
I think so too.
They made it exciting because, so many times we hear sort of like, conspiracies that are boring.
Yeah.
Like, going to the moon, right? Like,
that's a boring
that's a boring conspiracy. Like, Kubrick, he did it. I mean, everybody knows that. But this one, I think they made it exciting. They made it a little unpredictable. Like, 4th and 1, who knows? Like, you
going to overtime?
Overtime, yeah. So I really, people spending time on their conspiracies, I appreciate it.
Did you see what Biden tweeted out after the game was over?
No, I
He
didn't.
tweeted a picture of Dark Brandon, as they call it, which is the picture
Yeah,
of
that's
Biden
right.
with lasers coming out of his eyes, and it said, "Just like we drew it up." For those who haven't been following this, there is a legit conspiracy theory. I mean, it's not a legit conspiracy theory.
Thank you.
There legitimately is a conspiracy theory out there that believes that the Biden administration is behind Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, relationship. And all of this has been orchestrated so that Taylor Swift will come out and endorse Biden so that Biden will win re-election. And so for the Dark Brandon meme to be tweeted out by the president last night as part of it is, I think, incredible.
And I don't know if that was part of the conspiracy or not, but Trevor Kelce yelling out "Viva Las Vegas." I mean,
To me, I was like, Taylor Swift is dating this meathead who is just like barking at the end of a game. What does she see in this guy?
well, maybe. And so this is now we are going deep into this, okay?
Don't come after us, Swifties.
But I thought that his version of Viva Las Vegas was a little bit inspired by William Shatner's Tambourine Man.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
I think, Taylor Swift may be a fan of Bob Dylan singing Tambourine Man, and then his sort of like, cover by William Shatner. So that is my theory behind it.
Did you like any of the commercials in particular?
I thought Michael Cera, he's always really good for Cera V.
Yeah.
That was good.
It was the only one that you can really remember what the product was.
Right, but the Boston one, I thought that was really good and
I think
funny.
that might have been the best thing
That
of the
was,
whole
yeah.
night. The Dung
Duncan,
Kings.
that's right. I
And
thought,
Ben Affleck and J-Lo and Tom Brady and Matt Damon in there. Oh my God, that was really funny.
yeah, I thought that was fine. And overall, I think everything was very safe.
Yeah.
There was no mention of any controversies or anything. So.
Jesus spent $14 million to advertise during the Super Bowl, which I thought he maybe could have spent better, personally.
Right.
I mean, if you can turn all the fishes into loaves, and to separate them, that's one thing to feed people. That $14 million could have gone.
It's a choice.
Yeah. I also loved the Christopher Walken impersonation ad. I thought that was funny. I love that they used Neil Diamond. I said in an ad. Yeah.
I think as people, I don't know if they know or not, but we are mutual Neil Diamond fans.
Totally love Neil Diamond. At the karaoke event we did last week, I would have done Neil Diamond if I wasn't doing a duet. But you were great at that too as a karaoke judge for Big Brothers Big Sisters.
And I love the Take on Me. I mean, I know that Rick Astley and Rick Roll was the big thing, but I thought the reenactment of Aha's Take on Me video.
Yeah, with a pipe wrench fight, a live action pipe wrench fight.
So that was going beyond sort of like, beyond just karaoke. So.
Yeah. All right. Back to the real stars, Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed. As most people know, a shooting star is not a star. It's not a star at all. A shooting star is a meteor that's headed for a fall. As, say, they might be giants in a cover. When it falls to Earth, it becomes a meteoroid or a meteorite. And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so meteoroids are, as you mentioned, sort of like, they fall from the sky and they provide you samples for which you cannot directly get. Although, just as an aside, sometimes you do go and get samples, which, for example, a couple of Japanese space missions have done, and more recently, last year, there was a NASA mission that went to an asteroid, Bennu, and got a sample and brought it back, the mission OSIRIS-REx. And by the way, they had a lot of trouble opening the container in which there were these samples of this asteroid. They finally did it. They just needed, to put it underwater. No, that's not true. but they managed to do it. But other than that, the way we get information about, a lot of information about the solar system, what it was made up of, especially early information about the early solar system, comes from these meteoroids that have been roaming around our solar system, and then when their path intersects with the Earth, they land here, and I'm saying land here meaning to say they crash here oftentimes. If they are bigger in size, they can cause a lot of damage. Dinosaurs, rest in peace. But then there are a lot of smaller ones. And so to date, I think there are over 70,000 or so pieces of meteoroids, or these things that orbit rocks, that have been recovered here on Earth, so found them.
Which is great, because it costs a lot of money to go to Bennu and try to take a sample and bring it back. This is like special delivery from the universe. It's like, an Amazon purchase. Comes right to your door.
And people often go, for example, to Antarctica, because you can actually find them right above. You have snow there, and then you can just see, hey, on top of it there is a black rock in there, and you go like, well, that must have come from the sky. And or you can do the similar type of thing in deserts. So people find that. But early this year, in fact, on January 21st, there was a meteoroid that fell about close to the city of Berlin. And the interesting thing about that was this is a small meteorite, I think about a meter or so. But it was, before it came through the Earth's atmosphere, it was already being tracked by an amateur astronomer. He was like, okay, well, this had been marked. It was about a meter big. And he's like, well, it's going to come through the atmosphere and crash on Earth. And you want to get meteoroid samples sooner when they crash on Earth, because before they've been really contaminated by Earth. And so this particular meteoroid, it's called 2024 BX1. It, as predicted, it went through the Earth's atmosphere. It was being tracked. It formed a fireball because it was bigger in size. And from the color of the fireball, you could actually tell what it was, kind of what you would expect, what it would be made up of.
Because the colors will indicate what materials are made of. They burn at a certain color in the light spectrum. We learn a lot about the universe through spectroscopy like this.
That's right. And then the way it was moving, the way sort of like in the fireball was, they could actually figure out approximately where you can find these, or this little piece, or these little pieces that are left over. And so just think about that aspect, like, that we can actually figure out something is going through the atmosphere. We can figure out when the way it is burning through the atmosphere, the material it is made up of, and then the angle with which it is coming, you can actually figure out roughly where it's going to be. And then immediately after, a team of meteorite hunters, actually led by an astronomer from the SETI Institute. He actually was
search for extraterrestrial intelligence here in the U.S.
Here in the U.S., and he actually flew immediately from California to Germany, because because it was expected it was around there, and they actually found this small pieces, small like ping pong ball, walnut-sized pieces of this meteoroid. And what was interesting about it, and I should mention that it wasn't just him. There were students and researchers from Free University in Berlin, Museum of Natural History over there, the German Aerospace Center, and so on and so forth. Okay, so a bunch of people actually looked for it. They found these tiny pieces of this meteoroid. But what's interesting is the meteorite that they found is a particular type called an Aubrite. And it's AU.
Wasn't she the Secretary of State?
No. This is AUBRITE. So these are called Aubrites, and they are actually a bit different, and they are much rarer. And in fact, they look more like rocks here on Earth. Because the other meteoroids, when they go through the atmosphere, they become like glass-like and they look like black.
Because they get burned up through the atmosphere.
And they're oftentimes, they have a lot of iron in there, iron and nickel. This particular meteorite actually has like more translucent glass. So it came in, and they found these pieces, and so far we have found, and by we I mean humans, have found out of those over 70,000 meteorites, only 80 of them have been of this particular type. And if I read it correctly, it's like, and this is the only one that has been tracked as a falling meteorite, because again, you can find meteoroids that have already fallen, but this is one of those rare ones which actually has been tracked through its fall. So it's really precious, and these type of meteoroids are named after the first one that fell in a small town in France, Aubrite. It's Aubre, but yeah. So and I had to look for the pronunciation, Aubres. And so my deep apologies to French speakers. I'm butchering it, but yeah.
I'm not good with French either.
So and it fell in 1836. And I was like, let's look for, I mean, like, so 1836, what did people know? How did they find out? And it was really hard to find information about this particular history of this particular meteoroid, but I did find in the catalog of collected meteoroids, because it lists where they are and how they were found, because all of this information is important scientifically. And it turns out this town, and I looked for it even today, the town's population is 420. And so it's a small town.
They love their marijuana there.
and this meteorite fell on, they said, on a paved pathway. So again, 1836, next to a shepherd. And the shepherd picked it up and actually brought it to his master, and again I'm using air quotes in there, to his master, and his master actually broke it into a smaller piece. It was actually almost a kilogram in size, and he broke it up into a smaller piece and put it on a shelf. And 10 years later, somebody looking for and found out and heard about, like, that this piece of rock had fallen, wanted to get it to a museum, and he got it in 1845 from this person, and the recovered material was a little bit smaller, so it wasn't 800 grams or so. In fact, it was left about 500 or so. So that, I think, it's a fascinating story, that obviously people actually value things that fall from the sky. There have been stories of, there have been sacred traditions about that. American Museum of Natural History has a meteorite as well, Tomanavas meteorite or Willamette meteorite, but it was used by, it's an iron meteorite that has sort of like, kind of like holes in it which can hold water. And so Native American, the indigenous tribe, Tomanavas tribe near Portland, Oregon, they actually thought, like, that the water that collected in there was sacred water, and so it was used for medicinal purposes and other things. Same story has been repeated over and over again in human history, because you go like, hey, wait a minute, something fell from the sky. And so in Islam, in the Kaaba, that's in Mecca, the sacred space over there, and on one side there is a piece of meteoroid. There is a debate about whether it's a meteoroid or whether it's sort of like, something that got melted by a meteoroid. And people worship, people kiss that, sort of like, as a sacred gesture towards it. So these meteoroids hold a lot of meaning for humans, but also they provide clues about the solar system. And in some ways, scientists also consider them as sacred, or you can think about them as really, I mean, what is sacred? I mean, something that you value, something you find very precious, something that you think it gives you information beyond just simply what it is, looking at it. And so scientifically, these meteoroids are actually a window into the formation of our solar system.
So what's cool, Mr. Universe, Hampshire College astronomer, Dr. Salman Hameed, about these Aubrites is that A, it's named after this place in France. It's a very specific type of manifestation of the way that the materials it's made of, and it's very rare in the history of meteorites that we've found, and that this one that just fell in Germany earlier this year might be connected to another place in the solar system?
Yeah, so there is a debate about the origins of these Aubrites because, as I mentioned, they are different from most of the asteroids that fall, and we know that most of the asteroids come from, for example, the asteroid belt. They are sort of like leftover material. This is between Mars and Jupiter. These are pieces of rocks that didn't form. You can also think about a lot of these pieces of rocks that just left over from the formation of the solar system. But then astronomers have found, or meteorite hunters have found, I think about 500 that have come from the moon, because of course things strike the moon and they can actually eject from there, and also about 300 from Mars. And in fact, in the 1990s, there was one meteoroid that became very famous. Its name was ALH 84001 because at the time people thought that it was from Mars, and it was considered that it might contain signs of fossilized or early life from Mars, like fossilized dead life, but but there were indications of that. Now most scientists agree that probably that is not the case, and it wasn't biology, but it was still chemistry, but still fascinating, right? Well, these Aubrites, some people think, and some astronomers think, that it actually has come from the planet Mercury. And that is really rare. And again, as I said, only 80 of those have been discovered. And not just that, because astronomers can calculate their pathway. So we know that it didn't come from the inner solar system, but it came from the outer solar system, and probably from near the asteroid belt. And so we know that, and it's a particular type it's an E-type asteroid, and so we know where it's coming from. But there is an idea that early in the history of the solar system, just like the Earth was hit by a large body that ended up actually creating the moon, we think that Mercury was also hit by a body, and a larger body, and it actually ejected some of the material, and some of the material that, of course, what Mercury was made up of, and that these particular type of asteroids, those are actually pieces of Mercury, and occasionally and they sort of got moved out because of the early solar system towards the asteroid belt, but occasionally some of them actually get disturbed, and then they come to the inner solar system, and 80 of those, for example, have crashed here on the Earth, 80 that we have discovered. And this particular Aubrite that was discovered, that actually went through our atmosphere on January 21st, it was picked up. Humans picked up those pieces on January 25th. We think that the analysis suggests that it may be a piece of the planet Mercury.
When we go outside during certain times of the year, on a clear night, we can see a meteor shower. We can see these shooting stars, which again are not stars. They're wonderful to see, but remarkably common. Even tonight, you might, if it's clear enough, you could go and potentially easily see a shooting star. Why, if there are so many shooting stars all the time, do we only have 70,000 over the course of human history of these pieces that we've been able to find and analyze?
Well, right. So remember, most of the things that you are seeing in the sky as shooting stars, those are like size of sort of like dust grains. So those are really tiny, and they all burn up.
But even though they're so tiny, they burn so bright that we see them.
That's exactly right. So look for it. So occasionally you see a bigger one where you see, oh, there is a glow. You can see a green one, for example. It's burning up in the atmosphere, and it provides a particular information about that as well. Those are the fireballs. So there is a likelihood
Not the whiskey. Those are gross and will kill you.
That it actually can survive. The material can survive to the ground. And about 10 years ago, I think there was that the one that exploded over Siberia.
Yeah.
And which
the
a lot of people
videos are
actually,
incredible, yeah.
because during the daytime you could see that, and then they actually found this piece, actually a large piece of rock that was to the ground. So that's one of the reasons that you see a lot, because there is a lot of dirt, there's a lot of dust grains that are in the atmosphere, and as they go through, they burn up. And on average, if I remember correctly, you can actually see about 8 an hour on a normal night, and of course when there are meteor showers, and what that means is basically Earth is going through some dust that is left over, oftentimes from comets. that had passed through. So our Earth's orbit, passes through that leftover dust or whatever you want to call it, and as it goes through, those dust particles go through our atmosphere and give us a spectacular show. And of course, it is also responsible for all of our wishes to come true.
Right.
So that is really a crucial part of the purpose of those dust grains burning up in the atmosphere. Then it has to calculate everybody's wishes who is watching it, and then to go and make them true. So that's the reason. And also, 70% of the Earth is water, and so most of them actually go through, and even the ones out of those that survive, they go into the ocean or into forests or into other places. So it's actually, I look at the other way around, that actually it's quite incredible that we have found 80,000 of those or 70,000 of those and recovered those, and found that, that came from the sky, because yes, over snow, on ice, Antarctica, that's a great place. Deserts, that's a great place, but at other places it's very hard. And I should mention one other thing in there. I mean, there was a debate about the origins of meteoroids, and even though I mentioned a lot of them have been considered sacred because they came from the sky and all those things, but a lot of scientists for a long time, or natural philosophers I would say, used to think that actually they are a product of our own atmosphere, because the idea was that the world beyond the moon, for example, is unchanging. You cannot change. That was ideas inspired by Aristotle and others, and so that was a big thing, that things don't change. So you cannot have things falling from the sky that came from far away. And so one of the theories was that they were actually produced in volcanoes, and as the volcano erupts, it actually shoots out these things. They are in the atmosphere, and they comes from there. And then there were farmers and others coming like, I think they came from the sky, and scientists and all that. No, we know what we are talking about. No, they cannot. They must be from the atmosphere. But they would keep on bringing different pieces, and 19th century was important actually around the time when this Aubrite, the first Aubrite meteorite, was also discovered. People were like, okay, the evidence was getting bigger and bigger that actually, no, they do come from the sky. And then connecting it to the fact that we knew that the Earth goes around the sun, and there are other planets out there, and all of those things combined together. So then it was not as odd to think that meteoroids are actually, or these asteroids are part of the solar system, and they come from far away.
I wonder when Taylor Swift's star will stop burning so bright, crash through the atmosphere. Maybe somewhere in Las Vegas with her neat head of a Superbowl winning boyfriend shouting the whole time.
I have mixed feelings about that. I can't believe we're back to Taylor Swift, but I have mixed feelings about that, meaning to say, I think from what I know, from my deep research into the Kelce and Taylor Swift phenomena, I think he's a nice guy.
He seems like a nice guy.
Great voice.
I don't know about that.
But I think I think she's flying a little too close to the sun.
We already have a comet named after her, right? Swift Tuttle.
Oh, that's right. No.